you confirm, did you identify the shooter in this case yet?
Yes, we have identified the suspect. It's a 28-year-old female white, actually a Nashvilleian, or lives in the Nashville area. We are having ongoing investigation as it pertains to her at this time.
Located her place of where she lived? Do you have officers there?
We have.
Was she wearing body armor?
Was she wearing body armor? I can't say that far into the investigation. I don't remember seeing it, but I can't say for certain if she had body armor on or not.
Does she have any connection to the church?
From my initial findings is that at one point she was a student at that school, but unsure what year, all of that. But that's what I've been told so far.
Did she give any word on social media, or has her social media been examined at this point?
The investigations are still going at this point. Our federal partners, our state partners.
Audrey Hale, the female but trans-identified shooter who killed 6 people at her former elementary school, died the day she committed the shooting. 3 children had their lives cut short, along with 3 school workers, leaving plenty of questions. Although long dead, a lot of these questions remained unanswered, especially with how her journals have been kept from public view. A 90-page journal has recently been released as of September 3, 2024, though 20 others remain kept by the estate.
Grieving families of the Covenant Christian school shooter's 6 victims have claimed they own copyright of the full handwritten confession of the killer. They are arguing before a Nashville judge that the confession and other documents should never be publicly released because no good can come from it. The family's claims comes as both city police and the FBI fight to stop the confession and potentially information about mysterious notes and numbers found on Hale's body from being made public. Audrey Hale, 28, was a transgender artist who identified as a male named Aiden, shot her way into the Tennessee elementary school in March 2023, killing 3 adults and 3 9-year-olds before responding officers killed her. Following the shooting, Nashville's Metropolitan Police Chief John Drake said his force had recovered the shooter's manifesto, as well as hand-drawn maps in her car, and said they would eventually be made public. Now, both City Police and the FBI say the material shouldn't be released because the information could damage any potential investigation. Hale's manifesto has long been expected to reveal more detail about the killer's motive. A Tennessee judge on Thursday will determine if Hale's estate can assert a posthumous copyright claim over the handwritten confession and stop the information from being released. When Hale was killed as a result of the mass shooting, her parents transferred control of her estate to the families of the victims. The families have subsequently stepped in and become part of a public records lawsuit against the city. They claim the killer's estate includes the manifesto and that they therefore own the copyright and can determine whether or not to release it. The families, on the other hand, argue that there is no good that can or will come from the release of the writings. In a filing from last May, they referred to the materials as the dangerous and harmful writings of a mentally damaged person. The copyright claim is an extension of their attempt to prevent the documents from becoming public. Last November, 3 pages of notes written by Hale ahead of the shooting were leaked. The notes revealed Hale's plan. She was ultimately shot dead at 10:25 a.m., 14 minutes after she began shooting. An autopsy revealed Hale's clothing was covered in handwritten words, drawings, and numbers. It's unclear what was written on her clothes. The shooter also wrote a plastic orange anklet inscribed with the mysterious number 508407. Following the leak, 7 Nashville police officers were suspended after a probe into how the notes became public.
The first thing that I noticed upon opening the journal was how immature it looked. As someone who's kept journals my entire life, this looks like something I would have produced during my middle or high school years. The sad drawings, profanity, and ranting all point to expressions of anger without real structure or justification. However, going through the journal, I noticed several other concerning things. For example, Audrey consistently complains about a lack of love or romantic interests, and fixates on having a brown girlfriend to have pornographic sex with. She writes, "Can't butt sex a beautiful young brown woman with a big ass and small asshole. If I had a penis, it would be big and rock hard. Too bad I am a sad boy with a puny vagina. No brown girls, no love. I am nothing. Brown girls are the most beautiful. Brown girls have the nicest skin."
It was just like, hold on, I don't really know. I sent the message to my dad, and I was like, do you think I should say something or find somebody? He texted back, yes, in all caps, So after that, that's when I started making calls. I called the suicide prevention hotline, and then they told me to call the Nashville's deputy office. I just would have never thought like that I would receive a message before something tragic happens like this, and then find out, my city is mourning for something, that, somebody reached out to me prior to.
This illustrates a very porn-driven sexuality, as several studies illustrate that oral sex, vaginal penetration with fingers, and mutual masturbation were the most commonly reported sexual practices between women. The obsession with anal sex, which typically ends in injury and which is known for the discomfort and lack of sexual gratification it offers to the woman who is accepting it, is an echo of male sexuality, as shaped by the oversaturation and normalization of pornography usage. A derision of the female sex as being lesser illustrates the connection between trans ideology and this act of violence, as her self-loathing is intertwined with her delusions over sex and sexuality. More examples of her delusions include sentences such as, "I am a boy with no penis. So now in America it makes one a criminal to have a gun or be transgender or non-binary. I was called woman, lady, and ma'am all in one day. I hate everything about my gender. The guy who runs the comic shop is cool and he even has friendly customer service skills. He really knows his stuff and treats all guys fairly. I like being called bud, bro, and man. It just is directed 100% accurate to who I am as a guy inside. If only all the other men/boys could see me that way, that my body doesn't make me a female. 100% more like 5 to none. Sometimes people do identify me right away as a he since I look younger and smaller than my age. It helps, but when I am called a lady and ma'am, damn it, it makes me not want to exist. The body in me exists only to me. I'm just damn tired of being called and identified as a gender I am not. At all. At least I don't have big boobs or a butt, but yet I hate having boobs at all. They might have grown just a bit. I want to die." However, what jumps out at me the most is her immaturity. She frequently expresses a lack of desire to grow up and an inability to find work, maintain a job, or hold other responsibilities.
It's been hard, but it's also been an amazing experience when it comes to developing my creative talents and growing as an artist.
Audrey is not my name, but when you say it, I am just as the little one I was back then. I can be a kid again with you, alongside you, even if I can't really be with you. I broke my figurine. My outburst was because I can't stop feeling sad, angry, so sad, too much, too long. I hate to leave my animals, my art, my possessions. I had my favorite meal, chicken nuggets and fries. Life is gay. No actual job, no actual responsibilities, drop dead. She frequently failed at freelancing and even at waking up for part-time work such as Instacart. You always miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Shots I took. Police logo. Could not continue because the head leader left. American spirits. That internship was total bullshit. Fucking liar. All a game, not real. Illustrate book for a client. Finished the book, but it wasn't in full color. Never got full product, so was pissed off. First commission, but was all a scam and a lie. Made logo for my friend. Sora Entertainment, 1 out of 4 equals fail. My reality equals freelance won't help shit. Unable to wake up for freelance orders. In short, Audrey Hale was a depressed, same-sex attracted, self-hating transsexual. But above all, she was a NEET.
So there's this new social term coming out for Gen Zers and younger millennials, and that is the term NEET or NEETers. Yes, N-E-E-T. So what does that stand for? It is a group of people who have said no to employment, education, or training. Yes, they don't want to do any of that. Basically, they graduated from high school and they've now parked themselves on a couch or on their bed in their bedroom and are just waiting. Waiting for what, you might ask? Well, according to interviews, they're waiting for inspiration or the right job to move forward. So in the meantime, how are they surviving? Yep, you guessed it, mom and dad. So those of you who are not NEETers, I congratulate you. Want to know why? Because while your peers are sitting on their butt at home, you've got a bright future ahead of you. Have a good day.
A NEET is described as a person who is no longer in the education system and who is not working or being trained for work. According to an article posted on Global Affairs, more than a fifth of people worldwide between the ages of 15 and 24 years old, 21.7%, are considered NEETs in 2023, according to the International Labor Organization. At age 28, Hale's writings show evidence of immaturity, a fear of growing up, and an inability to fit the mold of what an adult should look and act like. Her depression and sexual identity, in addition to her inability to launch, were compounded by the lie of transgender persecution, the self-hatred that the movement perpetuates, and culminated in violence that can be at least somewhat attributed to her application of what she viewed as a male gender role. It is yet to be confirmed if she had begun using testosterone, or if in the depths of her mental illness and gender identity woes, she merely felt that violence was a solution to her suicidal tendencies. Hale is an exception to the typical NEET stereotype. Although receiving light increasing in tension as Generation Z is both criticized and supported for chasing a work-life balance, and work is definitely getting harder to find, making the American tradition of moving out in early adulthood less common, the truth is that this trend has been increasing over the years. While in the U.S., failure to launch is also known as Peter Pan syndrome, after the famous story of the boy who never grows up, in Japan, a more extreme but related condition is called hikikomori.
Japan's extreme hermits. Known as hikikomori, they are extreme recluses who don't leave their house for years at a time. In Japan, there's said to be at least 500,000 hikikomori. It's thought that the numbers could be double that because so many of them go uncounted. Most are men 15 to 39. Some experts believe that it's a condition caused by traumatic experiences or shame or grief, exploring its possible relation to autism, depression.
Described as modern hermits, hikikomori generally withdraw from society before they hit their late 20s, and can remain in the bedroom equivalent of a remote mountaintop cave for years, if not decades. As Ellen Hendrickson notes in Failure to Launch Syndrome, no matter the culture of the label, failure to launch cases are mostly, but not all, young men. Numbers indicate the problem is increasing. Indeed, in 2014, over 7 million American men ages 25 to 54 were neither working nor looking for work, up 25% from 10 years prior. And while the stereotype of a basement-dwelling man-child evokes labels of loser, dropout, or other unflattering descriptors, the phenomenon is more complicated than simplistic labels might indicate. Why is this happening? Ask a dozen experts and you'll get a dozen answers. The economy, the number and kind of jobs available, an unwillingness to take on education debt that can't be paid off by lower-level jobs, the decline of rites of passage to adulthood, or the failing frequency of marriage. All these things may be keeping young adults at home, but the defining feature of failure to launch is foot-dragging, delaying, stalling, or flat-out refusal to participate in life. While some young adults living at home are trying mightily to contribute financially or move out, Peter Pans have little intention of doing so.
So men have decided not to work at all rather than work a dead-end job because they feel like that's a threat to their social status. There's a lot to unpack here, so let's just focus on one, how this influences a lot of the conversations about dating, especially going on social media, and two, how this is actually a symptom of a much larger shift in the workforce that a lot of businesses aren't even paying attention to. In this article, social status is basically around men's ability to attract women. And what's important to note here is the self-awareness that as a man, not having a career is detrimental in your prospects of, dating and marriage. This all makes a lot of sense when you look at the conversations around dating right now. You have men on the internet arguing down why they should never have to pay for anything and justifying poor treatment of women. And then you have women, of course, complaining about the poor treatment. And the fact of the matter is there are studies upon studies about how men's self-worth and how they feel about themselves is directly tied to their income / their social status. It's not that they have a moral objection to, paying for dates or anything like that. It's that they literally cannot do it. And so they're mad at the women for asking for it. And obviously, if you are miserable and you are down bad because you cannot get your money up, you're not going to be a good guy. You're literally making it everybody else's problem. And what's even funnier is there are a lot of women who genuinely will give these guys a chance, but because they're so miserable, they've created these entire narratives and are now just terrible people. Now, we're going to get to the declining appeal of going to college and some of the other stuff when we talk more about the workforce. But the reality is there is more opportunity right now today than there ever has been to make money. So at some point, there has to be some accountability, which obviously in this situation doesn't exist because these people are just choosing instead to not work at all. However, back to the declining appeal of going to college. Not only is there a declining appeal to going to college and getting a degree so that you can make more money, there's also just a declining sentiment to want to work in the first place. And I'm running out of time, so we're going to get into this in part 2.
It's important to note that while men are doing worse in education, the workforce, socially, and with their mental health, a desire to avoid growing up seems to be universal. Part of this is choice, as the decision to fixate heavily on child-centered media, toys, and pastimes is not accidental. As fun and enjoyable as it can be to enjoy cartoons and juvenile stories, which do often hold deeper meaning for adult viewers, there seems to be a contradictory expectation of adult discussions and meanings in these works, while simultaneously maintaining the simplicity of a work geared towards a youthful audience. Now, it's not inherently unhealthy to enjoy things that are not conventionally associated with adulthood. Hobbies vary from dollhouse collecting, fashion, stuffed animals, Legos, video games, and more. And for the most part, it has become accepted that adults will have hobbies that fall into these categories. And the market has responded by creating additional detail and expenses that only adults can truly buy into. The issue lies in the division between compulsion and idealism, and of course, whether or not this interest becomes detrimental to everyday life. In a 2006 interview with NPR, Len Neary conducted an interview with the author of Rejuvenile, Why Adults Are Attracted to Kid Stuff, where the author, Christopher Noxon, suggested that part of what's going on here is our own kind of anxiety about the adult's life and kind of retreating back to a, on one level, escapist place, but also a more adaptable and kind of open one. He also suggested a drive to recapture some kind of dreamy, idealized version of their own past, to create a childlike part of their lives as adults. Given that this book was written 18 years ago, it's not a stretch to argue that the increasing number of NEETs is tied to the rising anxieties about the future, and a growing belief that the best days are far behind us. While it would be easy to argue that young people just need to grow the hell up, it should be acknowledged that a large part of the problem is that young adults are prevented from. The job market is unstable. The housing market is impenetrable. Attempting to be independent only works if one is able to afford bills, housing, and transportation. Rising sentiments about what life should look like has also changed. In the past, people didn't job hop as much. The expectation of a young adult making their way in the world wasn't unfeasible. Today, many young adults are trapped at home as they are unable to find work that pays enough to rent or buy a house, afford transportation, and thus lack the motivation to even try. As noted in an article posted to Fortune.com, not only did Gen Z miss out on major milestone college experiences, from frat parties to literally tossing their graduation caps in the air, but they also didn't get to taste the world of work through summer internships before diving into the job market. And as a result, 45% of surveyed managers regard Gen Z as being the most difficult to manage. The feeling of hopelessness and anxiety about the future, coupled with a lack of life experience, and along with it, changing perceptions of adult milestones, has led to a generation of juvenile adults with a consumption problem. Or, as James Gregg writes, we are a generation of adult babies. You can see it in the widely circulated and largely untrue idea that the human brain isn't developed until the age of 25, which means that anyone younger is still essentially a child. It's there in the notion that people with ADHD can't text back their friends because they lack object permanence, a skill that babies develop at 8 months old. It's there in the narrative that because gay people didn't experience a normal childhood, they're living out a second adolescence in their 20s and 30s. It's there in the hegemony of superhero films and the cross-generational popularity of young adult, where fans insist that grown-up literature is only ever about depressed college professors having affairs. The right-wing critique of infantilism usually contends that, due to a vague decline in moral fiber, young people aren't willing to embrace the mantles of adulthood, like moving out of the family home, entering into a stable career, getting married, and starting a family. For the most part, though, swerving these milestones is not an act of choice that young people are making. Adulthood is something that has been denied to many of us, who couldn't buy a flat or start a family even if we wanted to. In an age where so much agency has been taken away from young adults, where they face futures saddled with debt, unable to access the basic material trappings of adulthood, which in turn delays entry into emotional adulthood indefinitely. A retreat into the dubious comforts of a pseudo-childhood will have its pull. Professor John Cohen, psychoanalyst and author of How to Live, What to Do, tells Dazed. That said, even if the economy is foisting an extended adolescence on us, we can still choose to assert our dignity and refuse to become baby adults, or 26-year-old teenagers, helpless and dependent. Make no mistake, the capitalist elites want you to think of yourself as a silly little goose. From a psychoanalytic perspective, self-infantilization makes uncannily good sense. It's a kind of identification with one's own powerlessness, and so gives it a veneer of active choice, says Cohen. Freud managed to point out that when small children play games, they are often reenacting a traumatic situation with the aim of exerting control over it. I can't bear it when mommy leaves, so if I throw this puppet on a string and pull it back, I'll be in control of when she leaves and when she returns. I think self-infantilization is a belated version of this. If as an adult I play at innocence, cuteness, and delicacy, then I choose and assume some command over my feelings of helplessness. In a victim economy, being helpless can offer its own kind of power, as it presents the crux of all personal ailments as being someone else's problem to solve. Without any urgency on our own part to solve these issues, one can complain about the state of the world and point to their victim status as proof of deserving anything from free housing to a higher paid job without any individual merit. Suffering is supposed to be a sign of purity. Ergo, the more you are victimized, especially if it is by the vague, oppressive system, the better. Given the lies about transgender identification, such as that a majority of people want them dead or that suicide and murder rates are very high, it's not surprising that gender ideology would play a role in a rare example of a female mass shooter. If anything, it's only a proof of how dangerous these issues are, both on their own and when joined together. This, dear viewers, is where we part. I've been waiting for a really long time for this journal to be released, and then it was really difficult to read, partially because there's like a bunch of watermarks on it, and also because it's not like neat in any way, shape, or form. I journal, and most of my journal entries are pretty short, or they will have a lot of like ticket stubs and receipts, or I'll point out, oh, on this trip today I spent this much money. It's very orderly, it's easy to follow, and I guess a timeline. Her stuff is very much rage on paper, emotions put down on paper so that she can take control of it. And what I can say is that reading it just didn't feel like something a 28-year-old should be writing. I mean, we definitely all deal with our issues in our own ways, but at 28, I don't know, it just felt like a very juvenile way to write and to think of the world. And her fixation on basically she was in a sports team when she was younger that had a lot of black girls on it. And her fixation, as you might notice if you ever read it yourself, is on a specifically a former classmate who she had a crush on when she was younger. So it kind of reminds me in a sense of Humbert's Lolita. I messed it up. I mean, Vladimir Nabokov's Humbert in Lolita, because Humbert claimed his sexuality is because he had been frozen in time sexuality-wise when he was in love with the girl who was like a preteen when he was younger, never got to consummate, she died, whatever. And so he grows up and he's still fixated on that time period. It kind of feels the same with her. At the very least, she didn't seem to be pedophilic or anything, but she was very much fixated on the past. And I've noticed this kind of trend with a lot of different people. And that's why this is not specifically a trans thing. It's just a thing that I notice a lot of people in like their 20s and 30s are doing now. Because don't get me wrong, you can enjoy hobbies that are like a wide variety of stuff. I'm a big-ass nerd. I collected a lot of Transformers comics before I left the country, like $500 worth. I had to sell them all because there's no way I could afford to bring like 200 pounds of books with me around the world. But point being, I collected a bunch of those. I had figurines. I just got Transformers tattoos as a late birthday present to myself. I collect stuffed animals. I'm definitely not the epitome of adulthood, but the difference is dysfunction. You can enjoy these things. You can be a Disney adult who enjoys going to Disney and trying the new foods, and you can be the person who loves theme parks. The only time these kind of things become an issue is when they prevent you from being an active adult. And you do see that quite often on social media, especially TikTok, with I'm just a little girly, I can't do my own math, I'm just a little girly, I have to eat like chicken nuggets and fries. That's where I kind of see that showing through. And I definitely think that in groups that have that victim economy mindset, you see it a lot more. Don't want to move out, don't want to get a job, everything is awful and mean to me, so why bother trying to grow up? Anyhow, if you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!